Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Guaranteed Income in Practice Early Insights from Baltimore webinar. We're going to go ahead and start shortly, but briefly, we're going to start with a short poll for our participants today. So I'm going to go ahead and load that poll onto the screen, and feel free to select the option that best represents your role. You should have options that will range from researcher, practitioner, student, government, or other. So it should populate in a second. Just give it 1 second to load onto your screen.
Okay, so as we're watching the results of these polls come in, it looks like we've got a variety of different interests here in the webinar, for folks attending the webinar today. Many researchers on board here, other folks who are interested in some other way, practitioners, government folks, and some students.
Great. Well, I will go ahead and lock the poll, and then the overall results should go ahead and launch onto the screen, and we'll be able to segue into the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Miriam. So thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar today, Implementing Guaranteed Income Programs, Insights from Baltimore. I think we're going to have these poll results up here. And we're also going to talk through some of the housekeeping items. So as we go through the webinar, if you could make sure to minimize interference on the line, and we're going to keep you all muted for the duration of the webinar. You can use the magnifying glass icons on the upper right slide panel to increase or decrease the size of the slide on your screen. If you experience any audio or technical issues during the webinar, you can click on the Q&A box and let us know what the problem is. We'll do our best to help troubleshoot any issues that come up. If you want to submit any questions, please use the Q&A panel to submit a question for our speakers. And then we will have time at the end of the session to respond to as many questions as we can that come up during the session. Anything that we don't get to, we will be posting responses to those questions online when we publicly post the recording of the session. This session is being recorded, and as I mentioned, we'll post that online along with the questions. And then with that, let's get going. So I'm Hannah Thomas. I'm a senior associate at Apt Associates. And my colleague and moderator for today's event, Ashley, is unfortunately ill and unable to join us. We do wish her a speedy recovery. So I'm going to be standing in as your moderator for today's webinar. I'm joined by a terrific panel of speakers today, who I'd like to take a moment to quickly introduce here. First of all, I'd like to introduce the Honorable Brandon Scott, Mayor of Baltimore. Brandon Scott is the 52nd mayor of Baltimore and the youngest person to hold that position in the last 100 years. He's committed to ending gun violence, restoring the public's trust in government, and creating a brighter, better, and more equitable Baltimore for all. Mayor Scott is the force behind bringing a guaranteed income program pilot to Baltimore. Next, I'd like to introduce Robin McKinney. She is the CEO and co-founder of the Cash Campaign of Maryland, a nonprofit that improves the financial security of low to moderate income Marylanders. The Cash Campaign of Maryland is the result of a recent merger between the Baltimore Cash Campaign and the Maryland Cash Campaign. Cash and its statewide network of partners annually prepares 22,000 free tax returns, bringing in $30 million in tax refunds to low-income taxpayers, and provides free financial education and coaching to over 7,000 residents. Cash is implementing Baltimore's guaranteed income pilot for the city of Baltimore. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm Hannah Thomas, a senior associate at Apt Associates, and I'm a co-principal investigator for several evaluations of city guaranteed income pilots, including Baltimore's. In that role, I oversee the development of research designs, guide data collection, direct a qualitative and mixed methods analysis, and produce a variety of written products to share learning and results with policymakers and the public. And then we are thrilled to also have on this panel today, Ariana and Anisha, two mothers of young children who are also participants in the Baltimore pilot. So now I am honored to hand the stage over for a moment to the mayor, who will share why it was so important to bring a guaranteed income to his city. Mayor Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you all for having me and for hosting us today. For me, I've always really been attracted to the idea of guaranteed income as a way to reverse decades of economic inequity and to lift residents out of poverty. I actually got introduced by my good friend, Mayor Tubbs, to the idea. So I knew when I came to office that this was going to be a priority. So just 2 months in, I joined the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income Coalition. Part of that decision included committing to launch a pilot here in Baltimore. For me, it was a no-brainer. Baltimore is the birthplace of redlining and residential segregation, a legacy that shows up in stark inequities and continues to shape the life of the city today, limiting the economic potential of our communities, in particular communities of color. And to break down that legacy, we have to do bold and bright and new innovative things. And these inequalities, we know, were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and have disproportionately impacted low-income families. Ultimately, the Baltimore Young Family Success Fund is about shifting the status quo towards meaningful, equitable economic empowerment and mobility. And what better way to demonstrate guaranteed income programs' profound impact on residents' lives than by addressing this legacy and paving the way for young families to achieve greater economic mobility across Baltimore. By empowering young families, we move towards a better, brighter future. And my vision for Baltimore's Renaissance starts and ends with our young people. Every child deserves access to the resources they need to not just survive, but thrive. We can't just talk about equity. We must practice it through policy and strategic programming. This includes investing in young parents and children by providing financial relief for the household through the Baltimore Young Family Success Fund. This program provides a buffer to help low-income families find more stability and allow them to focus on their financial well-being, ensuring that our children are able to grow into the best versions of themselves. Research, as you very well know, Hannah, has shown, excuse me 1 second for ambulance going past. I think we're good now. Research has shown that poverty can impact brain development and mental and physical health. This creates significant long-term disadvantage to children and their family in every area of their lives. And we know that a guaranteed income can improve the quality of life for young families in Baltimore City and anywhere for that matter. When families have a baseline income, they are more equipped to handle material barriers, reduce food insecurity, pay for childcare, seek employment, keep that employment, and support the growth of our local economy and the small businesses in their communities. And while this program is just getting started, I'm excited to see the impact that these funds will have, not just on our participants, but as the city as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to the question of how this has had an impact on the racial wealth gap, or how you anticipate it may impact the racial wealth gap in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think we know here in Baltimore, we're a majority Black city. But again, with that legacy of redlining here in Baltimore, and knowing how that gap, when you're providing these funds to these lower income young families, you're then providing the opportunity for them. When folks ask me just simple questions, what does this mean? Well, if you're a family who you can't even afford to have a car, this could mean that for you. And that could mean that you could work in a better place more efficiently, be able to grow in your profession, get a promotion because you have to be there more often. And with the public transit issues that we have here, this is how we can work to allow folks to grow into the best version of themselves, making more money for them and their family, spending it on the things that we know they need the support for, so that that gap can begin to close.
Thank you. I think that's exactly right, like as you speak. And one of the things that I want for us to think about as we move forward is this, the orientation of what it means for families, and hopefully we can explore that with Robin and Anisha and Ariana, who we're hoping to move into talking to next. In terms of thinking about this question of economic mobility, it seems as well there's a question about the intergenerational component here. You mentioned children in your remarks. And I was wondering if you could speak to some of the hoped for outcomes for children who are in the families receiving the guaranteed income.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And we're very intentional about developing it this way. We know this is a unique pilot because we are focusing on young families. And I think about that in many ways, right? When young families have the ability to, hopefully from this, afford quality childcare, we know how that helps with a child's development. We know how that helps with their education. We know how that helps with their parents' ability to work and provide for them, to bring food and other things that they need on the table. And when you have all of those things in place, that's how you help a child grow. But also simple things. I mentioned this a second ago. But if you're a parent who you rarely get to see your child because you are out of the house early in the morning, catching 3, 4, 5 buses to get to work, and then you come home by the time you get home, the kids are asleep. You're not able to, not because you don't want to, you just simply can't physically be involved in your child's school. You can't go there. You can't afford to take off work. You can't afford to be helping with homework and assignments. And this kind of program then allowing these families to have their own personal transportation means that parents are getting to spend more time with their young people. That will also help with all their growth and development as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mayor Scott. Well, with that, I want to transition over to have a conversation with Robin and Anisha and Ariana. We're going to take that's going to allow us to dive a little more deeply into the Baltimore program. So just welcoming here Robin, the CEO and co-founder of Cash Campaign, and then Ariana and Anisha, two parents who are in the Baltimore Young Families Success Fund. I'm going to let Robin take over the conversation at this point. Thank you all for being here.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. And thank you so much, Mayor Scott, for your leadership to bring this program to Baltimore. As we believe firmly here at Cash, it's in our name. If you give people cash, it leads to hope, right? That's why we put it right in our acronym. And we know that parents like Ariana and Onisha are the experts on their lives. And by giving them the flexibility, that we know that they're going to shine. And we're already so proud of them just 2 months into the program. So thank you both so much for being here with us. If we can just start, Ariana, I'm going to start with you. If you can just give a short introduction of yourself. So your name, how many kids you have, and any background you want to share about yourself.
Okay. My name is Ariana. I have one child. She is currently 1 year old. And I guess you could say I'm an amateur writer.
Awesome. I love that. Maybe by the end of this program, you'll be an expert. Starting at amateur. Onisha, can you introduce yourself? Same question.
Hello, you guys. My name is Onisha. I'm 21 years old. I have one child. She's 2 years old. Her name is Denver, and I live in Baltimore, Maryland.
And she's a real joy. She is in our office right now, enjoying all of the wares that we have in our office here.
Yes.
Yes, she's adorable. So first question for both of you is, how did you hear about this, and what made you want to apply? We know that it could sound, on its face like, wait, what? People are giving away free money? What's up with that? Onisha, I'll start with you first for this question.
So I heard about this program on the news, as well as family members just sending it to me and saying like, hey, you should sign up for this program. I heard about this program. I think, it'll be good for you in Denver. You should sign up.
Awesome. Ariana, how about you?
I heard about it through a family member because at the time, me and my daughter were going through some pretty hard times. So it was...
Well, thank you for your family members, right? And
Right.
friends for looking out. One thing that was important for us when we were trying to get the word out about it is we knew that because there was only 1 week to apply, right? You had to hustle really fast to be able to fill out that application, is to try to get the information out as broadly as possible. So like, awesome for your friends and family for looking out for you like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so can you tell me a little bit, you're 2 months in, you get your third payment on the 15th. So how are you feeling about it, so far, 2 months in? What impact has it had on you so far? Ariana, I'll start with you this time.
I would say I'm really excited about how things are going right now. Basically in such a short amount of time, I was able to get my apartment. It's me, my daughter, my sister, my boyfriend, and I'm able to pay my aunt back because that's who I was living with beforehand when everything got really hard. So I would say it's been a really big help.
Awesome. Go ahead, Onisha.
I'm excited about this program. I'm really grateful that you guys were able to pick me out of, I know thousands of people applied. This program made a difference because it was really a stress reliever for me because I was backed up on a lot of bills. Before this program, I was unemployed, so I wasn't able to do much, but now I'm in the process of saving for me and my daughter. I'm trying to get a car so I can be able to get back and forth to work and things of that nature.
Well, and we all know, anyone that's had little kids know they are expensive.
Very much
right?
so.
They are very expensive. Can you just a lot of people right now are talking about inflation and the cost of everything, but can you tell me a little bit right now about what are some of the biggest expenses that you have being a young parent or a parent of a young kid?
Me?
Yes, go ahead.
One is Pampers. Pampers and wipes. Pampers is a lot for like 1 pack of Pampers. I'm spending and some wipes, I'm spending $20 for that. Pampers, wipes, clothes, shoes.
They grow fast.
They grow fast. So it's like every year, not every year, like every month or so, you're like buying, you constantly have to buy new stuff. They're constantly getting big. Their feet is constantly getting big. They're eating more. So it's like, with today's world now, the price is just going sky high. So it's like I gotta work more hours to be able to, before I had to work more hours to be able to, get the things that we needed.
Absolutely. Ariana, how about you? What are some of the most expensive things that you're seeing?
I would say right now it's the cost of food and traveling, like to get her to daycare.
Yeah.
Because like at a point we did have to travel a little further to go to like the market or something. Until recently, new market opened up in our neighborhood. But food was really expensive, like in some areas that we had to travel to. It was just, I don't even know how to explain it really.
Yeah, no, just the cost of just trying to eat and meet the basic things that that you need. Hannah, I can ask another question here. Or I can transition back to you.
You're good with timing, Robin, to ask more questions.
Okay, great. So another question I have is, what are your hopes for your kids? You each have a little one that is just right in the beginning, right? A 1-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So Ariana, I'll start with you for this time. What is your hope and dreams for your kid?
Honestly, I just want Corey, like that's my daughter. I want her to be able to live life without having to struggle. Because growing up, that's basically what I saw, my family struggling. And that's what I had to go through as I got older. Like, I struggled. But I want her to be able to not have to go through what we went through, basically.
Anisha, how about you?
I would kind of like to piggyback off of Ariana, as well as adding about college. College is big for me as well. I want to be able to have a savings fund for them to go to college. That's something that my parents didn't have for me, and it kind of pushed me back a little bit because that's something that I believe well, not every kid, but me particularly, I would love to go to college. So I want to be able to set up a college fund for Denver. So if she does want to go to college, she will have that opportunity to grow and do more things with her life.
Awesome. We got your back here to help you set that up. We have a great
Yes.
program here in Maryland called the Safer College Program. If you earn less than $75,000, you put in $25 a year, you can get up to $500. So another great example of why this program, it's about the money coming in, but it's also helping connect people to those resources. So before you leave today, let's make sure to talk about that. Last question for this segment, and Ariana, I'm going to start with you for this one is, what are your hopes for yourself? End of this program, we're 2 years from now. What are the hopes that you have for yourself?
Okay. So I do want to start a small business because I make knickknacks and things like that. So hopefully I can save up, buy the supplies that I need to start. Also, I just want to say that it's really like having the financial stability that I do now has really helped with my mental health. But I know that I could do better. So hopefully I would have time to look into counseling.
Awesome. Again, we're here to help you get connected both on the small business side and on the counseling side. Gotta take care of yourself first, for sure. Onisha, last question for you. So what are your hopes for yourself out of this program?
My hopes for myself is to be able to get me and Denver's own place. I want to be able to get a car, and I want to go back to school. I am going back to school. I graduated high school. I graduated from Western High School, and after that, I went to BCCC, Baltimore City Community College, for about 2 years or so, and then I kind of dropped out when I had Denver. I was studying to be in a medical field, so I'm hoping I can go back and finish school and get on the right track as far as my education and my career.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for answering questions. We're going to bring you back in a little bit, but for now, I'll turn you back over to Hannah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. It was wonderful hearing those really important insights and aspirations for your kids and yourself, as well as what you're thinking about and how this money might impact your lives. I want to move us now into a bigger panel and bring the Mayor Scott back to the stage to talk with Robin, Ariana, and Anisha. We're going to have a moment to learn a little bit more about CASH campaign and how they've been implementing the GI program, or Guaranteed Income Program. So Robin, I know we've got a couple of slides here to just take a look at and have up on screen so we can get a sense of a couple of visuals about the program. Do you want to?
Yes. So first, yep. The first, question that people always ask is, tell me about these 200 people that are in the program. So it's 200 individuals who are earning less than 300% of the federal poverty level. All of them are actually under 100%. They are all between 18 and 24 and have caretaking responsibility for at least one child, and are located in Baltimore City. So these numbers that you see here are on the screen are the combination of who's in the treatment group, who's part of the research, and then storytelling. So we have 130 people in the treatment group, so they are going through the research that you'll be hearing about, and then 70 that are in the storytelling, so people like Ariana and Onisha who are sharing their story and helping us to understand why this program is helpful, what other things that that they may need. It's a really important part of the project for us, that we're not just waiting for 30 months at the end of the research to be done to find out what's working and what we could be doing right now. So you can see here the profile here is again the sort of combination of those two groups. It's mostly women, but I will say that we worked really hard. Joe Jones from Center for Urban Families is the co-chair of the advisory committee. We worked really hard to get as many dads as we could into the program. You can see that the average rent that people were paying before they got any sort of subsidies was about $1,000. And again, thinking about that this is $1,000 of guaranteed income they're getting. This is basically covering like a month's rent. But you can see the sort of high and low there. And some of these figures we got out of our benefits counseling program, which I'll talk about in a second. You can see what the average household income is. We do have 20 people that are in public housing, and we were able to secure a waiver. Thank you for Baltimore City for working with HUD on that to ensure that folks do not lose access to their public housing while they're in the program. And it's really, really important. We also found that there were 26 people in the program that were considered unhoused or homeless at the time. So moving into stable housing is a really important first goal for a lot of people that are in the program. We found overall of the application pool, of which there were over 4,000 people who were deemed eligible out of like 20,000 people who sort of started the application. About 14% of them were considered unhoused or homeless. So again, just important to know that. The next question, if we could go to the next slide, that we get a lot is like, where are people? Where are the participants? So you can see here from this sort of heat map that we have folks that are across the city of the 200 participants, but anyone who has done work here in Baltimore knows about the work around the white L and the black butterfly, which comes out of Dr. Lawrence Brown, and where there has been investment or not. You heard the mayor talking a little bit about redlining and the history of segregation here. And so the places where investments have typically happened has been more in white neighborhoods than in black neighborhoods. And so in this program, we are flipping that, and we are investing this $1,000 a month over the next 24 months into these black neighborhoods. So this is really important for us. So good on the slides there. The other thing I just wanted to share a little bit about just sort of how we are managing the program, just sort of briefly, is, thanks so much to the mayor's office for coordinating the steering committee, which we were part of. And now we're really been in the day-to-day work. It took a lot to get as many applications as we did, to go through the onboarding process, which had a lot of steps. And I think what we found in everyone that we worked in the mayor's team is that we have just such an incredible base of nonprofits and city agencies here that we're just ready to get the word out, to be hubs for information, that we're there to help people from application assistance and onboarding. So I really can't say enough about how many people in the city care about helping young parents.
So Robin, I think one of the things that might be helpful for folks to hear about is just a little bit about the nuts and bolts, right, of the Guaranteed Income pilot in Baltimore. It's $1,000 a month, right, for every family who's participating in the program over 24 months. Can you say a little bit more about the pieces that went into making decisions about how much to provide, and then a little bit about the steering committee process?
Yeah, so the steering committee was pulled together by the mayor. He picked two of the best people you could pick in Baltimore, in Joe Jones and Danielle Terrain. Danielle is at Open Society Institute. Joe Jones is at the Center for Urban Families, Baltimore's grandfather, some people may refer to him as. They brought together, some of the best and brightest in the city. We had a bit of a larger or maybe more diverse steering committee, I think, in other cities, because we have such a history here of one, great research, right? We have the eds and meds here, right? The educational institutions and the different medical facilities. This is a real, teaching hospital place with having the med school and so many people focused on public health. So we had folks that are in those spaces, a lot of people who work with parents and families across the city, funders, of course, and community members. And, the process to come up with the scope, I think, is the biggest question that comes up is, why this group versus that group. And I have to say, everyone deserves this. If there was unlimited resource, there is not one group that is better or different than other groups. The decision here to focus on young families with young kids is, one, based on the incredible base that we have here with Be More for Healthy Babies and such a focus on young parents and making sure that pregnant women and young parents have what they need to help their kids to thrive. But also, just frankly, seeing the incredible power that came out of the advanced child tax credit that was happening at the end of last year, which we now have seen has, incredibly cut child poverty by more than 40%, by giving young parents money every single month. We knew that would be an important population. There were focus groups, there were surveys, there was a lot of conversation that got into the work to even say, okay, here's what the scope is going to be.
Yeah, well, and I think it would be really interesting to hear more from you, Mayor Scott, around this piece as you were sort of looking at the kind of trade-offs in deciding where to put some of the funding that was coming into the city. Could you speak a little bit more to the sort of history from your perspective of the development of the guaranteed income pilot in Baltimore, and the kinds of trade-offs that you had to weigh up as you were making those decisions?
No, thank you for that. It wasn't even a decision to me. What we really had to think about is it wasn't if we were going to do it, but how, right? And as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about the history of redlining here, the inequities that happen here, but also really a history of not funding programs like this and impacting the people who live in those very neighborhoods, right? This is why I passed way back now in 2018 Baltimore's racial equity law. So we made the decision to use our American Rescue dollars to help to fund this, because this is what those dollars were for, to try to help people, Americans, Baltimoreans, bounce back, not just bounce back from that pandemic, but better and stronger. And I knew that there would be pushback from some folks who will consider, guaranteed income government overreach or a handout. But I often say time and time again, in the words of the great Jay-Z, that women lie, men lie, numbers don't. And the data has shown every place that has a guaranteed income pilot program that people, families are using this for the things that are necessary. That is misplaced criticism. That is folks who are really gaslighting and trying to politicize and make racial and economic casting on folks just because they're uncomfortable with a different way of thinking. And we have to make this very clear. $1,000 a month to a family isn't enough to incentivize someone not to work. You can't live off $1,000 a month. And we have to be able to do things that we know will help people, that will unlock opportunities for them and give them really the platform to grow into the best version of themselves so their family can be better. So for me, it wasn't a hard decision. The criticism comes with the job, and you do the right thing is always right and wrong is always wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, so building on that, and thank you for that response. Building on that, I'm curious in terms of thinking about, obviously you've invested some money in evaluating the pilot, and just for folks to hear a bit about what you're hoping to learn from that evaluation, to learn from conducting the pilot in Baltimore.
Well, as we know, as I just said, we know how valuable these guaranteed income can be to our residents, and we want to be another case study on the success of these programs. And the truth is, I want to be on the ground level of folks when we look back at history and say, these group of mayors, starting with Mayor Tubbs and coming through the rest of us, were the leaders in getting the federal government to go down that line and adopt a guaranteed income program. We're hoping to see quality of life improvements for young families across the board, better health outcomes like we talked about, increased parental engagement and time with their children, economic mobility, stronger families, educational things, right? I think you heard it best from Anisha and Ariana, what they hope to get from this, and that's the truth. We want to see these young families be able to grow, to go back and get their education, to buy a car, to get their own place, right? All of that stuff matters when you're talking about closing that racial wealth gap, when you're talking about having young people be able to be successful from early age all the way through their ability to through school. And this is what this program is about for us and what we hope to start to see. And I think you're on mute. We can't hear you anymore.
Thank you very much, Mayor Scott. Apparently, I had double muted myself. So Ariana and Anisha, I'm curious to hear a little bit about what's been surprising about being on guaranteed income. Has there been anything that has surprised you about from what you expected you'd experience?
I would say the most surprising thing is like how hands-on the team has been, like the cash team. Give me a minute, sorry. If you can come back to me.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's totally fine.
What's surprising about participating in the program is just being able to be selected in the program is surprising for me. In the community where I come from, which is low income, opportunities like this don't come often. So for me, I had to like jump on it, and hopefully I would be selected for it, and I was selected for it. Also, I can't believe that Baltimore City, when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, Baltimore City's really doing, a program like this. I never thought Baltimore City would do something like this. And so, yeah, and another thing, Ariana, like they said, they're very hands-on. Like I get emails from, I could say almost every week, I'm getting an email from the cash campaign, just checking up, making sure everything's okay, wondering, we could participate in this or that, or speak for them like we're doing now. So, yeah.
Really wonderful to hear. And I think just following up, Ariana, if you feel comfortable, I'm a little curious to hear more about the hands-on of what pieces of the hands-on engagement with cash has been really surprising and helpful.
I would say like meeting everybody like in the office recently. It feels like we're genuinely building relationships, like a friendship. Kind of sort of, and it's really, it adds on to the fact like I thought everything would be like really professional, like just straightforward, but it really genuinely feels like they care about how we're doing and how our families are.
You're gonna make me cry, Ariana. I do want to say that, as in our organization, we had every single person here make phone calls to do the notification calls, to do onboarding, because I really feel like it's the honor of our life to be able to stand with these 200 families. And, we've all had our own journey here. And for you, Ariana, and for Onisha, like we got your back, and we want every 200 of you. We can't put our arms around every single person in the city. I wish we could, but like we got y'all. This is such an opportunity for you, for your life, for your daughters, for your families, and we just appreciate how present you've been for this, because you could just ignore us, right?
Yeah.
We can be annoying. It's fine. You could ignore us, but we appreciate how you've stepped up.
You're welcome. And thank you.
So Robin, one of the pieces that I think people may be interested to also hear about is a little bit about the benefits component to this. Could you speak a little bit to the potential for benefits cliffs and the benefits counseling that you've been implementing in order to try and prevent impacts on benefits from guaranteed income?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we had this process that we called onboarding. Other cities are calling it something similar, where once we got the list of the names of people who had filled out the application, which I will say was a random sample from all the 4,000 people that applied, was just automatically generated. So in a similar way to winning the lottery, right? Of that you could just be randomly picked. But then we had to make sure that folks were eligible. So we had to make sure they were in Baltimore City, 18 to 24-year-olds, caretaker for a child, as well as below the 300% poverty level. And so we did a initial phone call, which was a very exciting phone call. You can imagine the notification call to say like, hey, you've been selected, and send some emails. And then we knew that that was a sort of exciting, but also overwhelming moment. I can imagine, Ariana and Nisha, I can imagine when you first got that message of like, whoa, what? So instead of jumping into all of the details of the program then, the next thing we did was to book people for an appointment for benefits counseling and then for their orientation session. And at benefits counseling, so here at CASH, we help screen people for benefits and get them connected to a variety of benefits, and have been doing that work for 15 years using a variety of tools. For this project, we wanted to find out sort of the opposite, is that if people were already receiving benefits, how this payment was going to impact them. So unfortunately, it is considered as countable income and impacts the amount of money that folks are getting for things like SNAP, also known as food stamps, temporary cash assistance, and other benefits. You heard me talk a little bit earlier about the housing waiver we were able to get. So what that means is that people had to make a sort of calculated decision about, okay, well, I'm getting $1,000 through this program. I'm going to lose $100 in SNAP, but I'm still netting $900. Does that work for me? I will say out of the, almost everyone received benefit counseling. I think it was about 180 out of the, we talked to 225 people because, again, there's going to be attrition. Some people weren't eligible. We talked to a lot of folks. Only one person chose not to participate because of the impact on benefits. And in that conversation, it was really important for us to help people understand what that trade-off was going to be for themselves. Okay, if your benefits are going to be reduced. I will say, you know, the point of the perspective of CASH is that I think it's outrageous that benefits are impacted. These are benefits that are supporting families in cash, in food, in help when they're pregnant or have a small child. And it's outrageous that we should not have access to more funds to be able to help these families.
Great. Thank you so much for speaking to that piece of it. And Ariana and Anisha, I don't know if you have any observations or from the experience of going through that benefits counseling, if you wanted to share anything about what that was like. Was it helpful? Were these questions that you had thought about before?
It was initially a question for me until like I realized that would be counted as my only source of income at the time, because I was unemployed and I wouldn't say homeless, but yeah, it was my only income, so it didn't impact me too much, honestly.
Great. Anisha, how about for you?
Thanks,
How was it to go through the benefits counseling conversation with the CASH team?
Well, I believe I waived it, but hearing from what you guys said, I was unemployed as well, and only other benefit that I do receive right now is SNAP benefits, and it really didn't impact my SNAP benefits actually. So the only income I'm having right now is SNAP benefits and the guaranteed income. So that was good.
And so, you know, one of the reasons why the counseling is important is because people's life changes, right? As you get a job, as your hours shift, as this comes in and out. So while we did benefits counseling at the beginning, you guys should know, hopefully we've told you this, but throughout the program is that as things change, we're here to keep having those conversations and figuring out if there's a shift. There's lots of folks having issues with paperwork right now with SNAP. So that's something that we are helping people sort of navigate that situation too.
Okay.
Right. And there's a question which has come into the chat around whether did guaranteed income help you stabilize your housing situation?
Is we both? I'm answering. Yes. Yes. Because for right now, I don't live in my own housing, but I'm saving to get my own housing. So it helps me a lot. And as well as I spoke about transportation. So,
It definitely helped me because within the first month, I was able to pay on my apartment. So it's been a pretty big change.
That's a big shift. Month one.
It really is.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think everyone's appreciating hearing your experiences a massive amount. So thank you.
Anna, can I just ask a quick question actually here is, you know, part of the thing that is different about guaranteed income is it doesn't have the restrictions. It doesn't have all the check-ins and rules and regulations that you have on benefits. So if you've received SNAP or other things, you know the process that you had to go through that. Can you just tell me, do you feel any difference of what it feels like to be receiving guaranteed income versus receiving SNAP or temporary cash assistance or any other benefits? Does it feel about the same or does it feel different?
It feels different. It's different for me because it's more help. It's more help. So it's very different.
Exactly. Like it's more flexible.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
you may need something here or something there that SNAP or WIC can't get for you.
Great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thanks for asking that question. So to sort of, I'm going to funnel us back out into a broader view here and just ask a kind of final question here for this section of the webinar to the mayor. How are you looking at this, at the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program in Baltimore going forward for the future? I know there's a question sort of intimating at this in the chat, but it'd be really great to hear kind of your thoughts as you're looking forward for learning. Obviously, we've talked a bit about learning from the pilot, but where you go from here.
Yeah, I think that's, Hannah, is the number one and most important thing to me, right? We need to, I'm always a person, I don't act on emotion or anything like that. When you're talking about something as transformative as this guaranteed income pilot that we're doing, the next steps are going to be driven by the data and the lived experience of like folks like Ariana and Onisha and their family. That's what will determine how we move forward. Because when you're talking about something that will be as revolutionary as this, when you're making that case to other folks to fund this, et cetera, folks are going to need to see exactly what happened. And as we know that really we should be continuously pushing this on the national level, because I'll just say it, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, this is something that should already be happening.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Scott. You couldn't have transitioned that into a better way over to talking about the data and evaluation piece. But I really appreciate everyone's contribution here to the conversation. I'm going to spend a moment talking about the evaluation component and what APT is doing in regards to that. So I think there should be some slides that pop up. And then we will, after I'm done, we'll have some more broader conversation and discussion with everyone in this webinar. So as I've mentioned, I think I've introduced myself ad nauseum here, but I'm Hannah Thomas. I'm one of the principal investigators on the overall guaranteed income portfolio, as well as one of the the principal investigators for the Baltimore program. I want to acknowledge my co-principal investigators, Randall Girass, who's at APT, Dr. Lorraine Dean, who's at Johns Hopkins University, and Dr. Stacia West, who's at the Center for Guaranteed Income Research. And we are working closely alongside Dr. Ashley Smith, who wasn't able to make it today. And the whole team together is doing a whole big portfolio of work to better understand the outcomes and experiences of participants in the Baltimore Guaranteed Income Pilot. The next slide. So we are working closely in this bigger portfolio of guaranteed income pilots that Mayor Scott spoke to earlier. We're working closely with the Mayors for Guaranteed Income, who's managing over 40 different pilots across the country, and APT's evaluating 9 of those cities now. That just went up as of today. And the Center for Guaranteed Income Research, who we're partnering closely with, is evaluating over 30 cities across the country. We're working with the center to create a common framework for evaluation so that we can compare not just what's happening in Baltimore, but also how that compares to other cities across the country. So we're using common methodological approach and common survey instruments. And we're aligning that with the Mayors for Guaranteed Income's learning agenda. The key questions that we're asking for Baltimore, the next slide. There are 4 key questions for Baltimore. 3 of these are questions that are being asked in other cities. And we're trying to keep within, as we're asking the research questions, we're trying to keep it participant-centered. And by that, I mean, we want to understand and hear from the program participants themselves. We want to elevate their narratives and their lived experiences in receiving the guaranteed income. As these research questions are, how does guaranteed income impact income volatility for participants? What's the relationship between income volatility and financial well-being, as well as psychological distress and physical functioning? And what that really means is what the mayor talked about in a much more eloquent terms, well-being of people. How does income volatility impact people's well-being? And then what is the relationship between guaranteed income and individual agency of participants? How does this change people's sense of self and what they believe and know that they can do in the world? Finally, in Baltimore, we're asking a question around how does guaranteed income impact parenting and the relationship with the child in the household? So there are many questions, additional questions we'd love to understand, but this is our starting point so that we can align with that broader guaranteed income evaluation and build our learning across all of these cities across the country. Next slide. So the design of the evaluation is done in such a way that we're going to collect a bunch of different data. Some of these data sources are elevating participant voices directly and in somewhat different ways from how we might see a typical evaluation done. But the first part in this is we want to conduct a systematic impact survey that we've done through a randomized control trial. We're collecting data every 6 months through that survey. And the survey is collecting data from everyone, the people who are getting the guaranteed income, as well as the people in what we call a control group, so that we can understand what ways that differences in the responses that we see are as a result of receiving that guaranteed income. So we're asking a range of questions about financial behaviors, income questions about physical and mental well-being, other questions on the sense of efficacy and agency. And we're also asking questions about childcare and the time that participants have for certain parenting activities. I want to emphasize within this there's a focus on health as well. We're very interested in how people's health is being impacted. The interviews that we're collecting, we're conducting 50 interviews with participants in the program. And we want to understand the lived experiences of the people who are receiving the guaranteed income through those interviews. So we'll be looking at things such as, what are the relationships between receiving the money and parenting? How do we see changes in not only the types of activities that parents and children engage in together, but how parents feel about the time that they have with their children? And we're working closely with Dr. Lorraine Dean at Johns Hopkins University, and she's going to be exploring some additional questions about health in the interview data and in the survey data. Additionally, she's conducting a photo elicitation project with a small number of participants who will be telling stories using images and photographs that they take, with the focus being on how guaranteed income is changing their relationship to their health. And then finally, the city will be working with some participants as the storytelling cohort. And these folks will be sharing their stories in various ways through social media and other different venues online. And Anisha and Ariana are a part of that storytelling cohort. So we're working also with community research fellows, folks who are part of the Baltimore community. They're people who will be helping conduct many of the logistical activities in the research, but they'll also be helping us ground into the community and understand. They will have the direct lived experience in Baltimore, and will help inform some of our analysis and thinking about what is happening on the ground. I want to quickly share some demographics from the people who are receiving guaranteed income. What we know about the folks receiving guaranteed income at the moment is that most have 1 or 2 children in the home. The average age of participants is 22 years. 92% of folks receiving it are Black, and 88% are women. The mean annual income of those in the program is about $15,000 a year, and 89% of those are single-headed households, folks who are solo parenting. 3/4 of the participants are receiving benefits, either SNAP or WIC. So we have a sort of a picture of the folks receiving the guaranteed income in the pilot at the moment. I want to share a little bit about what they have shared about their aspirations, of how they would spend the money that they receive through guaranteed income. And I think you'll see that this slide and this word cloud that we've used from survey data collected during the application for receiving guaranteed income, it really shows, it resonates very much with what Anisha and Ariana have shared. So you can see that in this slide, the biggest, oh, if you can go to the next slide, I'm sorry. In this slide, you can see that the words that are most important and mentioned the most across 266 different responses are that people are planning on spending that money, or they're thinking about spending that money on children and bills. These are high, the numbers of folks that we know responding to this question. It demonstrates to us the kinds of needs that families have. The guaranteed income is looking to be spent and will help families meet the needs that they have for their households to pay for childcare, pay for their children's expenses, pay off debt, and to cover bills and rent. Next slide. To just give a few quotes here from the responses to that question, to that same question, from individuals, and again, highlighting what we've heard from Anisha and Ariana. The vast majority of these responses are reflective of these quotes. One parent said, "I think that most will pay their bills that they need to pay, finally attain childcare and reliable personal transportation, and finally be able to save, buy healthier food, and pay off debt." Another respondent said, "I can't speak for the other mothers. I just know I have bills to catch up on, and I could finally put my babies in daycare." And just the final quote to highlight here, this respondent saying, "I can only speak for me. I'd take the money, get my son in a place that we can call home, enroll him into a good daycare, I'll go back to school and even try to start a small business. So we can see that these participant voices, again, are centering how important guaranteed income may be to families' financial well-being. They're centering their expectations of spending on covering past debts, paying bills, getting themselves financially stable, and putting children into childcare so they can work and be able to think about their future personal goals of going back to school or starting a small business. And I think this is where the potential and power is in guaranteed income, and hopefully through this evaluation, we can start to answer questions about these longer term questions about how this is impacting families over the long run. So I'm going to pause there. I know we've got a bunch of questions to respond to from the audience. All right, so.
Hannah, can I add one thing before we go to questions?
Go for it, Robin, yes.
As any successful, which hopefully we are right so far, pilot program, it's about the people behind the scenes that are making it happen. And I just want to say like the biggest shout out and thank you to Tanea Moore and Lona Muckle on our staff who have managed 150 million logistics on any given day and are also showing such intense care for our participants. And that's who Ariana and Anisha and the rest of our participants are interfacing with. So I just need to say a very public thank you to Tanea and Lona.
Yes.
Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, the folks implementing are so important. So to transition here, we've had a few questions that have come in both in preparation for the WebEx or the webinar, as well as during the time that we've been online here. I want to start with a question, Mayor Scott, to you that has come in a couple of different ways. How do we navigate some of the pushback that we hear, or how have you been navigating some of the pushback that you've heard from policymakers who consider this overreach? Or worry in some way about implementing this program?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said earlier when I addressed this issue. We know that criticism is misplaced. We know in many places it's based in racism and sexism and thinking that folks who are not the wealthiest or the wealthy don't deserve what I call not a handout, but a hand across, right? This isn't about dependence, but about facilitating financial independence for these families. We know what the research shows. We know, as I said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And like I said, $1,000 a month isn't enough to make someone not go to work. This is about helping people, and the number speaks for themselves. And what we have to do is be as loud about the truth and as disciplined about make sure that we're reinforcing the truth of these programs as folks are with the misinformation that they try to spread.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Okay, another question that we've had come in. Robin, what were some of the top challenges you faced with this pilot?
Some of the top challenges were honestly the amount of logistics and a very short period of time to get people to the application. We had only 1 week of the application being open, so we had a lot of people that we needed to train. Anyone that was going to help someone with the application was considered part of the research, so they had to go through the ethical trainings that were required as part of that. We also had a short period of time that we wanted to onboard people in. As soon as, from the time that we were notifying people, we were in the way of people getting paid, right? And we took that very, very seriously. And so we wanted to move people through the process as quickly, but as high quality as we could. So that was a lot of logistics. And we had a lot of people we couldn't reach. The gap between when people were notified and when they filled out their application was about a month, and we had a lot of phone numbers that were wrong, that were not working anymore, mailing addresses and physical addresses that were not good anymore. So we used couriers. We didn't rely on the United Postal Service to get the mail where it needed to go. We used couriers to go to people's houses, to every known address that we could find. And we also just didn't give up on people right away. People are balancing a lot. And so if, it's not like, oh, we didn't hear from someone in one day, the next day we would, take them out of the program. We really, worked with people to try to figure out if someone couldn't find a piece of paper or whatever the thing was. We just, tried to stay as present as possible and just help people move through this when they're trying to balance a lot too. And, I will say in other cities, they had an onboarding team of like one person to do this for everyone. And I think for us, the facts that we had both public and private investment here meant that we could really staff it up so that we can provide all these other services attached to it, and that we can be more present with the participants in ways that I think if you're one person trying to just deal with 200 people, you just can't be.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Robin. And I'm sure as time goes on, there'll be more additional learning as well. I want to ask a question here that's come in for Ariana and Anisha. So do you see a potential opportunity to organize with fellow guaranteed income recipients or with people who don't receive the guaranteed income payments to push for longer term guaranteed income policies in Baltimore, Maryland, or even federally?
I think given the opportunity to do so, I would definitely push for more people to be involved in a program like this.
I agree with Ariana as well.
Are there, and sort of to follow up on that, are there places that you think that you would go to or opportunities for that organizing in your communities?
I can't think of like a specific area, but like just citywide, if maybe we could involve like a different group, like a different demographic, maybe formerly incarcerated or teen parents even. That's a group of people I would focus on.
I agree as well. And for me, I would say particularly in East Baltimore area, because that's where I'm from. I'm from the East Baltimore area. So I think it would definitely help a lot of people in that area.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those responses. A question has come in just around whether we are going to be interviewing folks in the control group. So I can quickly speak to that. We are not going to be interviewing folks in the control group at this time. Our plan is to use the interviews to dive more in depth into the experiences of people who are receiving the funds. We have looked at different study designs in other cities to think about, could we interview control group members, since there may be important shared experiences and differences, obviously, between the two groups in terms of how they're able to meet financial well-being goals, continuing to parent, the kinds of struggles that they face. But for this particular study, we are focusing on the treatment group. All right, we have a question that's come in.
Anna, can I just add something onto that?
Sure.
One question that always comes about the control group is around, so folks didn't get it, so what do they do? And, we've really been pushing this set of additional resources that we pulled together that we sent out as part of the application. As if people got a decline email that they weren't participating at all, whether they were in the control group. These are all services that are open to the public, that are already here existing in Baltimore. But as we well know, a lot of times people just don't know about them. And so, in moments like this where, yes, we have these 200 families that are getting this additional support, we also have a great base of nonprofits and government agencies that are providing awesome services here. So like it also is on all of us to make sure that we're getting the word out to these same families to make sure that they can access those services that are, again, there and open to the public to help.
Really great point, Robin. Thank you. Okay, so we are coming towards the end of our time here, and I know there are more questions coming in. As we've mentioned, we are going to be having an opportunity to continue responding to those questions. We'll, if you have additional questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out and be in touch. But so I want to just transition here out of our panel and thank our distinguished speakers for joining us today and really sharing, I think, incredibly valuable insights. The event has been recorded, and we will share the link to the recording with all the registrants in a follow-up email next week. Please do stay in touch to learn about projects related to guaranteed income and apt associates. And I'm sure we will, if you have questions about the ongoing works in Baltimore, please we'll share the contact information for all the folks on the panel. And I know that they would love to hear from you with those questions about what they're up to in Baltimore. So you can sign up for the apt Associates Housing and Community Development newsletter and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have a QR code here, as well as our Twitter handle and Facebook and LinkedIn handles. And these will be shared in the follow-up email as well. And then my email address should be on the next slide, I think, for you to reach out to with any questions. And I can direct you to the appropriate folks from the panel in Baltimore if you have questions for them. So as we exit the event today, a short survey is going to pop up in your browser. Please share your input on today's event and any suggestions that you have for future events. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, thank you to our great panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you, Ariana. Thank you, Mayor Scott. And thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
We hope you all have a great afternoon.
You as well. See you.
Take care.